Okay, welcome back then. It is early April 1869, and yeah, I've taken a bit of time out, partly because there's just some real world business to contend with. I've also had wisdom tooth pain, which I've never really had before, but it was, God, so excruciatingly bad that it actually was painful to talk. It was painful to move my mouth. And yeah, so I just thought, well, I'll leave it for a few days for that to kind of subside and do a video, when I can. And also, I thought I'd take the time out to playtest Victoria 3, as I guess everyone has. Quick capsule review. In my mind, not great, not terrible. I'm probably not the biggest fan of kind of post-CK2 Paradox games, if I'm honest with you. And that's no fault of Paradox necessarily. They've got their thing going, and that's fine. But I think there's a lot of kind of focus on UA, all hat and no kind of trousers. It's sort of... I always kind of, whenever I play a Paradox game now, after a few hours, it's like eating kind of like McDonald's food or something like that. There's this kind of like sense of guilt, self-loathing afterwards. I can't put my finger on what it is. But anyway, Victoria 3 it's not a terrible game by any stretch. It's not well reviewed, but I mean, I don't really care too much about how games are reviewed. I think one of the most popular grand strategy games is Hearts of Iron 4, and I hate that game. So anyway, to the business of the hour, then I'll keep it as fairly kind of punctual business report. The timeout has given me a little bit of time to reflect. If I'm honest with you, I probably have some regrets now about bailing on the Austria war as quickly as I did. I think the reasoning was kind of fundamentally sound. The problem is if we keep the options set, as I explained in a previous video at length, I suppose, there's this kind of multiplication of threat possibility, and it's very easy in this game to just throw away the work that you've done. And unlike other games, it doesn't matter, you can shrug it off, but you then have to kind of live with the consequences in real time for many months and maybe years, and it probably would have made for a more interesting video had I kind of prosecuted the war, even if I get into some real dicey trouble. But it would make the game depressingly dull if I then lost most of the Arabian Peninsula or whatever, or Britain intervened, and there would be very little that the Ottoman Empire could do about it. We've done really, really well, I think, by exercising some careful judgment and trying to ensure that we're not fighting lots of opponents at once. And done okay, One thing that has happened is that Austria is at war with Russia again. Now, that's obviously pretty spicy. I'm hoping that they make the same mistake before and at some point declare war on us again. And if not, we might actually this time make a move against Austria. I think next turn of the circle, when hostilities resume between ourselves and Austria, and they are going to, because I think that's just going to be the state of play now in the Balkans. And that's not completely unrealistic. In the last analysis, when the Ottomans were kind of on their arses, as they were in the 19th century, they're no real threat to the Austrians. But when the Ottomans were powerful, they were an existential threat. The Austrian Empire is a Balkan power, and unlike other powers, the Ottomans occupied this kind of peculiar position, I suppose, in the eyes of Europeans as being kind of not completely civilized. They were really recognized as a great power during the period, albeit one that was kind of in decline, the sick man of Europe and all this. But the European powers could probably get away with a little bit more in terms of hostilities towards the Ottomans than they could other European powers. And indeed, it was throughout the 18th century that the Austrians and the Ottomans were continuously at war, and the Ottomans were defeated in kind of salami slices, really. They lost the territory here, territory there. It was various peace deals combined that ended up kind of, I suppose, weakening their position in the Balkans, or releasing these principalities and Hungary and Transylvania going to kind of Austria. And I'm thinking that might form the basis for a reversal. The 19th century is not the 20th century, where you're going to have a big war and you're going to completely reshape everything in one fell swoop. So we might kind of do the same thing to Austria in this century as to what Austria did to us in the last century. Salami slices. Every kind of war, every sort of outbreak of hostilities, which will be continuous, we'll look to press new territorial acquisitions. The thing is, of course, eventually we will probably end up fighting Austria and someone else simultaneously, and that will be touch and go. And then we'll probably be looking to press a white peace with whoever that is, maybe even Austria, but we want to try and keep the territory we've got. The main thing is that if we gain territory from Austria as well, we always have a bit of collateral if we do get ourselves in a pickle. So if we end up fighting Austria and Russia simultaneously, Austria gets the upper hand, we're not able to change the state of play, we can give them back, the Dalmatian coastline, and in a weird way, it's no massive loss to us. This was Austrian territory anyway at the beginning of the campaign, But I'm thinking next turn of the circle, we'll look at the Dalmatian coastline and Bucharest, I think. You know, we'll set ourselves a kind of goal, and we'll hold our nerve until we make that goal. But we probably won't change the options until we have a very strong position over the Austrians, where we can press claims. Because bear in mind, most European powers already in a position to press border claims with other territories. The Ottomans are unique in that they don't, because they were a defensive power during the period. Economically, it's been a really, really good turn. I mean, when I look at the amount of state kind of revenue, the gold reserves, if you like, they are, I mean, like, we never would have dreamed of having 3,143 kind of state revenue. You know, the gold blocks are piled up, and it is incurring inflation. A lot of this is coming from both diamonds, which we are mining now, you know, en masse, in a serious kind of quantity. I mean, in Q8 alone, the Q8 issue has resolved itself. So the gems pit there is churning out 9 units per turn. That's probably like 3 times more. Yeah, that would have been about 3 times more than we were making per turn for most of the campaign so far. And that's from one pit alone. And it's running at 109% productivity. So the manpower, which you can see here when I hover over the mine, the manpower issues have resolved themselves. I think probably once the pit is there, once there's a kind of demand, that functions as a kind of a vacuum. It sucks in kind of workers and sort of clerks and this kind of thing from other parts of the empire. Maybe it converts some pops, you know. Development's still sitting at 42%. I think we still have merchants being played. We've got 2 turns. I'm going to see if after 2 turns that 42% bumps up. But anyway, that's really, really satisfactory. And we're going to look to replicate that in 3 other sites. So we've got a diamond mine in Qatar. Currently productivity is only 17%. And it's churning out 1 unit of gems per turn. But bear in mind, that's where Q8 was at like a year or 2 years ago. Qatar has railroad development. We're building the kind of port up, large civilian harbour now. And I think that should serve to kind of, you know, again, function as a kind of vacuum, draw in the kind of pops that we need to increase our kind of diamond yield there. The mine is there. Everything is kind of set up and in place. And we're doing the same in Dubai. We've got railroads going in. And basically all the diamond mines have been upgraded now, and they've got railroads being put in. It'll take a bit of time, but we're going to be looking soon at, you know, it's got to be something like 37 units of diamonds per turn. You know, I mean, that's like crazy. That's amazing. It's set to 50%, so 50% of those will be sold in the domestic market to generate private revenue yields. The other 50% will be converted into the kind of state exchequer. That would probably end our reliance on gold. That would probably end the kind of gold period for us. We'd then look to kind of stop importing gold. We're still importing quite a bit of gold. Let's have a look how much we've got actually. Yeah, and we've got 29 units of gold, and gold is set to pure conversion. So it is incurring inflation. It is going to put pressures on a kind of currency value. That's to be expected. 1% inflation is okay. You know, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. But yeah, the net result is now we've got a huge amount of state revenue, and we've got loads of options with that. Military expansion, when manpower allows. We've got this constant kind of like emergency reserve now for a rainy day. For if, you know, if things kind of get kind of serious militarily at some point, we can use these to expand huge numbers of kind of fortresses. And of course, the main thing is also research and development. We're now able to invest in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 branches of research and development, and we're not losing. You know, we're staying above 3,000, and we're investing in education to the 500 state revenue per year now consistently. We've done that for the last 2-3 years, which is driving up literacy, and that of course accelerates all of the other branches as well. So it's really good. I mean, as expected now, research and development is principally focused towards the Navy. The Army has been a focus for the last 20 years, and for understandable reasons, you know, like our main opponents are land powers, Russia and Austria. They're not sort of big maritime powers. I mean, Russia is, but we can hold our own against the Russian Navy. That won't be the case in the coming decade. You know, iron ships, breech-loading rifles is an army branch. Gun turrets is going to be important, I think, for sort of ironclad frigates, and opening up options later on for the kind of steel ships. Monitors also. Monitors are the kind of like... Monitors are a step up really from what we've got. So what we've got is kind of ironclad riverboats and monitors and ironclad frigates. I mean, by the time you ironclad frigates, you've got large ships, basically large, you know, large frigates that are just they're encased in iron. So they're the kind of ships that you saw at the kind of intro, the flavor video that I made for ironclads when we launched our first ironclads. Most of those, I think, were ironclad frigates. You know, like for the most part, frigates and corvettes and that kind of thing. So yeah, gun turrets, steam ship of the line, and that's obviously important for iron propulsion. We're not going to be able to move our iron ships using auxiliary sails, even though auxiliary sails were on iron ships. They couldn't do anything. Gun cotton is important for projectiles, for both our artillery and also naval guns. And reserve formations at 99%. That'll be complete next turn. We'll probably then switch that over. That's going to give us access to 3 new units. I'm not sure if it's just reserve units, which we might have access to a lot of them, which may be a lot cheaper. That'll be quite interesting. I'm not sure, though. It says it gives us access to 3 new kinds of units, but it's not always telling the truth. It might be that the Ottomans, certain factions don't have access to certain things. So, like, our troop specialization, mountain troops, I think there are some kind of, which we've mostly got concentrated in the 7th Army, which is being constructed. I think we're one of the few powers that can develop these, because the Ottoman Empire is very mountainous in the east. There'll be some other powers, I guess, Italy and Austria probably also. But we don't have access to light infantry, for example, whereas other powers do. So there'll be some kind of troop specializations that are unique to the Ottomans that we'll get, which will be quite good. So we might look at other things. Torpedoes, for example. Torpedoes would be good for early torpedo boats and early torpedo destroyers and this sort of thing. And we've got huge amounts of state revenue to plow into this now. So it's gotten us 20 years in, and the Ottomans, it feels like we're now kind of playing like a great power. If you started playing Austria or France in 1850, probably feel a bit like this. You know what I mean? Feels like you have options. You can do stuff. You're not just kind of like playing catch up, and we are playing catch up still, but it feels like we're a credible great power now. If I compare our economy to say, let's have a look. Our exports, we're well established now as a major opium exporter, exporting like 20 units per turn, and we're the only opium exporter as well. I'll double check that. Opium, yeah. Huge amounts of demand for it, of course, but we are the only player when it comes to opium, and our opium yield is only going to be going up as railroads are kind of completed. In fact, they are mostly completed down there. They are mostly completed. So we've got a really good yield of opium. Coffee as well. We started exporting coffee, but yeah, we're well and truly on the map. That's not complete. We've got railroads going in 75 days in Zanzibar, and we've got 2 plantations there as well. And then, of course, the opium plantation in Mogadishu has temporarily been given over to the local rulers. There's a bit of thinking there, really. They were becoming a little bit of an irritant, conducting raids. We defeated them militarily, but they were destroying our kind of trade posts and stuff like that. So I thought, let's make peace with them, try and keep good relations. And in the last analysis, military control would pass over to us once we get to protectorate status anyway. And we're not far off getting protectorate status. What do we need? I think we need 40% in the colonial capital. No, it's a colonial penetration between 30. Yeah, so we're not far off already. We need to raise colonial penetration in Kismayo. I didn't realize Kismayo was actually part of Mogadishu. But it is. Or Somalia, I should say. But it is. So we need to raise penetration there. We've got colonial trading posts, merchants. We've already got missions, and we can probably do some chief bribing. Within a year, we'll have penetration up to the necessary threshold to really bring this area into the bag. Initiating conflict with the locals was really designed to kind of like just kind of keep them under control a little bit, but it ended up just being counterproductive in the last analysis. Like, they're not really a threat. If we're at peace with them, we get territorial control anyway. Once they're a protectorate, we bring some of the ruling elite on board with the protectorate status, and then once they become colonial status, we send a governor, and they're basically just subject, So it was probably surplus to requirements to do that. But anyway, we're well established in Eritrea now. We've got a colonial fort. In fact, it's not even a colonial fort. It's a regular fort being put in, a depot, anchorage. Italians already have a mission and trade post, so colonial penetration for us is going to be mostly based on bribing operations, conducting kind of like pacification campaigns against the locals and stuff like that. This is not a huge territory, Eritrea. It's comprised of Massawa, Assab, Alsar. We have no colonial penetration there, and Asmara. So we need to need to work on raising the penetration in this area, push it over to protectorate status. There's a chance the Italians will lay a stake in both Somalia and Eritrea. If we come to blows over that, it's going to be a colonial war. I think the Italians at this stage are going to struggle to project themselves. They're quite a poor, backward power for the most part. The north is obviously developed, but I don't think we have anything to fear from the Italians just yet. Maybe in a decade's time, something like that. Yeah, going really, really well. I mean, if we compare the economy, just basic economic indices, and bear in mind the kind of national market sales exports this turn are fairly typical now, really. And if I compare that, so let's look at domestic market sales. Are sat at, let's have a look, 263 units of goods sold, generating private revenue of 867. If we compare that to a decade ago, so 1859, domestic market sales are about less than half, 109, and they yielded about 386. So domestic market sales, the domestic market has more than doubled in the last decade. Exports a decade ago were 100 units at 305. They're now 226 units, generating private revenue of 837. So it's not just that they've doubled in terms of quantity, but the kinds of things that we're exporting, opium, luxury goods, these kind of high yield items just generate much more revenue, which is really, really good. So the economy's expanded significantly. I mean, in terms of like the value of total stock has about doubled as well. Value of stock in 59 was sitting around 5,439. It's about 10,000. So the value of stock's increased. A lot of that is because we're sitting on a lot of gold, diamonds, stuff like that, and also just because the economy's bigger, we do hold a lot more stock. So for example, coal, we're able to export coal at the moment. If we had much more coal, we would start losing coal anyway, just through corruption, because you reach a ceiling in terms of how much of a commodity your economy can hold before it begins to just vanish into the ether, just, stockpiles, and yeah, just kind of, you just have too much of it, you can't store it. So we're able to export coal. We'll keep a careful eye on coal, because at some point, again, our industrial base will probably surpass our coal production, but our coal production is substantial now. I mean, our coal pits have all been upgraded, so they're looking at 16 units per pit now. I mean, 13, it depends where it is, of course. A lot of the variation between different locations is just the attitude of the population. If there's kind of popular enthusiasm, you're likely to get a bit more. If there's problems in the area, there might be lower productivity, lower level of loyalty, strikes, demonstrations, stuff like this. So this fluctuates a little bit. But output ranges between 10 to 16 units per site. In Eastern Anatolia, we've upgraded the iron mines. Not every iron mine, because we make a decent amount of iron anyway. We've upgraded 3 iron mines, 2 in Van, 1 in Kars. And this is an important area for iron mining for us. We have to keep that in mind if a war breaks out with Russia. We want to have a decent stockpile of iron in case these areas, even if they're temporarily occupied, you only need to lose access to a site like Van, which has 2 large iron pits. If we lost access to that for 3 months, and military operations at this time, 3 months is not a long time. But for the economy, it can. Not having access to much iron for 3 months could be tricky. We'll check really quickly, actually, what a stockpile of iron is. Yeah, we're sitting on a huge amount of iron at the moment, and we're offering it for export as well. It may even be the case that iron is topping out. Let's have a look at inorganic goods. Yeah, so wastages and corruption. So the more you get, once you reach a certain ceiling, it just becomes wastages and corruption. Your economy is holding so much, it just levels out. So there's only a certain finite amount, but the bigger your economy is, the bigger that ceiling is, sort of thing. Once you develop a large enough economy, you just have a huge ceiling. That's pretty much it. I think for kind of, for early April. I mean, when are we going to end up at war with Austria again? That's because that's really the kind of that's really the kind of how what's shaped the game, isn't it, so far? Oh, maybe the peace deal's already ended then. Okay. We'll just click on Austria's. So they're still at war with Britain. They're at war with Russia. Yeah, so it could be any day. It may not happen. It may happen in a year. It might happen in 2 years. It might happen in 6 months. But we know it's coming. To that end, we have kept all of our kind of deployments, all of our armies now in the European theatre. And one thing that we have done is, before we've really constructed the 7th Army, is we've got a constant flow now of kind of fortress divisions and emplaced artillery regiments being constructed that we're just trickling into Constantinople, Adrianople. I mentioned in the last video that in Constantinople we're now going to continuously maintain a large garrison. This is a significant force now, 65,000 plus 126 emplaced guns. Some of there's going to be coastal guns, plus we have some pioneers. These guys will repair damage, for example, to the fort. And we've also got military police in Constantinople that will fold into the garrison in the event of a siege. That will kind of mean that if in the event of a failed assault on the capital, these units can regain cohesion much quicker and this sort of thing. And as I mentioned in the last video, we do have now a permanent commander, a new commander, who we're going to try and always maintain a commander in command of the Constantinople garrison, unless we really need a field commander, that is, you know. But that commander is a defensive commander, you know. Defending a city is the furniture of home for that guy. I think I'll leave it there then. It's early April. The next video will pick up in a few months' time. We'll probably do a kind of mid to late summer report. Maybe June, July, August, something like that. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.